Thanks, Brandis. The latest reports out of Kabul indicate that a military-led evacuation of embassy and support personnel out of Afghanistan is underway again. This as Taliban leaders cement control of the entire country. Officials are also scrambling to help Afghan allies who supported the American mission to leave the country as Taliban checkpoints spread across the country and the capital of Kabul. But how many Afghans can safely be evacuated and settled in the United States? Joining us now to talk about the unfolding situation is Jim Porter, spokesperson for Refugee One. That's Illinois' largest refugee resettlement agency, which is working to help unite Afghan Americans with family members now trapped in Afghanistan. And we reached out to a number of Afghans living in Chicago to be a part of tonight's conversation, but they turned down our request, citing safety concerns for family members still in Afghanistan. Jim Porter, I'm sure that's something you're hearing a lot. What are you hearing from some of your members about family members that are in Afghanistan right now?
Yeah, thanks, Paris. Appreciate you having us here tonight. We're hearing a lot from the Afghan families that we've resettled in recent years. As you can imagine, a lot of them still have family in Afghanistan, and so they're deeply concerned about their family's ability to make it to safety. Some of these individuals helped U.S. forces overseas, and that's why they were able to qualify for a special immigrant visa, which is a special category that's allocated for individuals who have helped U.S. forces. And so these are individuals who have not only supported the U.S., but really risked their lives and their families' lives to save American lives. And so it's our feeling and our desire to make sure that these individuals have a pathway to safety and that they're able to be reunited with their families.
And you've resettled about 500 Afghans here in the Chicago area since 2014. What has resettlement been like for them?
Yeah, so most of the individuals that we've resettled from Afghanistan are individuals who came on special immigrant visas. And so because of that, they have some kind of unique needs that are different from other refugee populations that we serve. Primarily that most of them speak English. And so as you can imagine, that's a huge leg up when you get to the United States. And many of them have strong educational backgrounds and professional experience as well. And so one of the unique things that we have to do for Afghan refugees is trying to help them find work in the fields where they've worked previously, but also just, those basic services to make sure that they're adjusting to life in the US. So we provide case management and housing as soon as they get here to Chicago. But we also provide a host of other services that really work together holistically to make sure that refugees have everything they need. So we have a youth program, we have English classes and employment services, and even a mental health program that's geared towards helping refugees overcome trauma.
And these are programs you offer to many refugees. I remember doing a story with you about Syrian refugees several years ago. The U.S. has talked about the troubles of evacuating some of these Afghan allies. How many do you think can be evacuated safely from Afghanistan, and how many do you anticipate would come to Chicago or Illinois?
So there's not a great way to estimate how many will be coming because so much of the situation has just been in constant state of flux. We had heard that there would be about 18,000 special immigrant visa holders coming to the U.S. and that they'd be first taken to Fort Lee, Virginia, where we were actually planning to deploy 10 of our staff last week. But over the weekend, we found out that they had halted SIV evacuation flights. And because of that, they also don't have a need for additional case managers from our agency to go there. Although we heard today that they've started resuming some of those evacuation flights. So our hope is that at least those 18,000 will be able to get to the U.S. We already have several assured cases at Refugee One, meaning that we have a couple families that we'll be welcoming in the coming weeks. I know that other agencies in Chicago that do resettlement have also been informed that they'll be resettling Afghan families. Hard to predict what that number will look like, but we have the capacity and the ability to welcome many. And so it's our hope that as many as are able will be able to get a pathway to safety.
So the situation is still in flux. One of the things I learned from talking to an Afghan American was that there is concern that Afghans that do receive the special immigrant visas, when they come, the Taliban might find out and put their family's life at risk if they stay in Afghanistan. Is that something you've heard, and does that mean that perhaps visas should extend to the families of Afghan interpreters and other allies?
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the reasons that I'm here tonight speaking is because most of the Afghans that we work with are not comfortable speaking with the media. In fact, one man who we're helping right now, two of his children are U.S. citizens, and they were actually in Afghanistan with his wife at the funeral of one of their family members who had been targeted by the Taliban because of this family's involvement with the U.S. And so this is a very, very real problem. It's affecting people right here in Chicago, and they're concerned. They're devastated. He, of course, is trying to do anything he can to get his family to the Kabul airport, which is really kind of the last hope for people who are trying to escape. We've been working with U.S. entities, everyone from our National Resettlement Agency, which has relationships overseas, to congressional offices like Jan Schakowsky, to the Department of State, to try and make sure that we can find a way to get these people to safety.
And at the same time, it seems like there's been a PR campaign from leaders of the Taliban saying it'll be different this time. They're not going to threaten women. They're not going to threaten folks who assisted the U.S. Do the Afghans you talk to believe any of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of that information has come out just today and towards the end of yesterday. And so I haven't heard a lot of response to that. Most of the people that we're working with are really caught up right now and just trying to ensure that their families are safe and haven't actually began processing some of the things that are coming out of the Taliban. Of course, I think everybody has skepticism, right? That women will be included, that women will have rights, that some of these issues that have been significant issues in the past, that they'll resurface. We were talking with a young Afghan woman earlier this week, and she was just expressing what it felt like to live under the Taliban influence and how terrible that would be if her country were to return to that. So for her, at least, it was something that she was really concerned about.
All right, well, we'll keep following this and your efforts and the efforts of other refugee resettlement agencies in the area. And for now, our thanks to Jim Porter. Thanks so much.
Thanks for your time, Paris.